Judges 4. Deborah, Barak, and Yael. But Benaiah Israel again did what was evil in Adonai's eyes after Ehud had died. So Adonai sold them over into the hand of Jabin, king of Canaan, who reigned in Hazor. His army commander was Sisera, who lived in Harosheth HaGoyim. So Benaiah Israel cried out to Adonai, for he had 900 iron chariots and had harshly oppressed Benaiah Israel for 20 years. Now Deborah, a woman who was a prophetess, the wife of Lapidoth, was judging Israel that time. She used to sit under the palm tree of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim, and Benaiah Israel came up to her for judgment. Now she sent and summoned Barak, son of Abinoam, from Kadesh in Naphtali, and said to him, Hasn't Adonai, God of Israel, commanded, Go march to Mount of Tabor, and take with you 10,000 men of the sons of Naphtali and of the sons of Zebulun. Then at Kishon Torrent I will draw you out to Sisera, commander of Jabin's army, with his chariots and his multitude, and I will give him into your hand. But Barak said to her, If you are going with me, then I will go. But if you aren't going with me, I won't go. Surely I will go with you, she said. However, no honor will be yours for the way you are about to go. For Adonai will sell Sisera into the hand of a woman. So Deborah arose and went with Barak to Kadesh. Then Barak summoned Zebulun and Naphtali together to Kadesh, when 10,000 men marched up after him, and Deborah went up with him. Now Heber, the Kenite, had separated himself from the Kenites, from the children of Hobab, the father-in-law of Moses, and had pitched his tent as far as the oak in Zaananim, which is near Kadesh. They told Sisera that Barak, son of Abinoam, had gone up to Mount Tabor. So Sisera ordered all his chariots, 900 iron chariots, and all the troops that were with him, from Harosheth HaGoyim to the Kishon. Then Deborah said to Barak, Arise, for this is the day in which Adonai will deliver Sisera into your hand. Has Adonai not gone out before you? So Barak came down from Mount Tabor, 10,000 men following him. Adonai threw Sisera and all his chariots and all his army into confusion before Barak, with the edge of the sword. Then Sisera got down from his chariot and fled away on foot. But Barak pursued the chariots and the army as far as Harosheth HaGoyim. The whole army of Sisera fell by the sword. Not one was left. Meanwhile, Sisera fled on foot to the tent of Yael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, for there was peace between King Jabin of Hazor and the house of Heber the Kenite. So Yael went out to meet Sisera and said to him, Turn aside, my lord, turn aside to me. Don't be afraid. So he turned aside to her in the tent, and she covered him with a blanket. He said to her, Please give me a little water to drink, for I am thirsty. So she opened a skin of milk and made him drink some and covered him. Then he said to her, Stand at the entrance of the tent, and if anyone comes and asks you, saying, Is there a man here? Then you will say, There's no one. Then Yael, Heber's wife, took a tent pin and got a hammer in her hand, approached him stealthily, and drove the pin into his temple until it pierced into the ground. For he was exhausted and in deep sleep, so he died. Now behold, as Barak was pursuing Sisera, Yael came out to meet him and said to him, Come, I will show you the man whom you are seeking. So he entered with her, and behold, Sisera was lying dead with a tent pin in his temple. So on that day God subdued King Jabin of Canaan before Israel. The hand of Benaiah Israel pressed hard on King Jabin of Canaan until they had cut off King Jabin of Canaan. Judges chapter 5, Deborah's song. Then Deborah and Barak, son of Abinoam, sang on that day, saying, When the leaders take the lead in Israel, when people freely offer themselves, bless Adonai. Listen, O kings, give ear, O rulers. I to Adonai I will sing praise to Adonai, the God of Israel. Adonai, when you come out from Seir, when you marched from Edom's field, the earth trembled, the heavens also dropped, yes, the clouds dropped water, the mountains quaked before Adonai, this Sinai at the presence of Adonai, the God of Israel. In the days of Shagmar, son of Anath, in the days of Yael, the highways were deserted, travelers walked by crooked paths, villages were deserted in Israel until I, Deborah, arose, and mother in Israel arose. They chose new gods, then war was in the gates. No shield or spear was seen among 40,000 in Israel. My heart is with Israel's rulers, who offered themselves freely among the people. Bless Adonai. Riders on white donkeys, sitting on saddle blankets, traveling on the road, sing. Louder than the sound of archers at the watering place. There let them rehearse the righteous acts of Adonai, the righteous deeds for his villages in Israel. When the people of Adonai went down to the gates, Awake, awake, Deborah. Awake, awake, utter a song. Arise, Barak, lead away your captives, O son of Abinoam. Then a remnant of nobles came down. Adonai's people came down to me with the mighty ones. Those with root in Amalek are from Ephraim, following you. Benjamin with your peoples. From Machir came down rulers, and from Zebulun wielding the martial staff. Issachar's chiefs were with Deborah. Issachar was with Barak. Into the valley they rushed at his hills. Among the divisions of Reuben there were great resolves at heart. Why did you stay in the sheepfolds to hear the piping for the flocks? Among the clans of Reuben there was much searching of heart. Gilead stayed beyond the Jordan, and Dan. Why did he stay by the ships? Asher sat at the seacoast, dwelling by its docks. Zebulun is a people who jeopardized their lives to death, and Naphtali also. On the heights of the battlefield the kings came. They fought. The kings of Canaan fought Taanach by the waters of Megiddo, but they took no spoil of silver. From heaven the stars fought. In their courses they fought Sisera. The Kishon torrent swept them away. That ancient torrent, the torrent Kishon, O my soul, march with on with strength. Then the horses' hooves beaved from the dashing of his mighty steeds. Curse Meroz, said the angel of Adonai, utterly curse its inhabitants, for they came not to the aid of Adonai, among the mighty. Blessed above women is Yael, the wife of Heber the Kenite. Above women in the tent she is blessed. Water he asked, milk she gave, in a lordly bowl she brought him butter. Her hand reached for the tent pin, her right hand to the workman's hammer, and with the hammer she struck Sisera. She smashed his head. Yes, she crushed and pierced his temple. At her feet he collapsed. He fell. He lay between her feet. He bowed. He fell. Where he bowed, there he fell. Through the window Sisera's mother looked out through the lattice and lamented shrilly. Why does his chariot delay in coming? Why do the wheels of his chariots tarry? The wisest of her princesses answer her. Yes, she repeats the words to herself. Are they not dividing the spoil? Maidens for every warrior. To Sisera a spoil of dyed garments. A spoil of dyed garments of embroidery, double dyed garments of embroidery, for the necks of every spoiler. So let your enemies perish, Adonai, but may those who love him be like the rising of the sun in its might. And the land had peace for 40 years. Judges chapter 6, Midianite oppression. Then Bani Israel did what was evil in Adonai's eyes. So Adonai gave them into the hand of Midian for 7 years. Midian maintained an upper hand over Israel, and because of Midian, Bani Israel made themselves hidden hideouts in the mountains, caves, and strongholds. Whenever Israel had done their sowing, the Midianites, Amalekites, and people from the east would come up and raid them. They would set up camp by them, destroy the produce of the land as far as Gaza, and leave nothing in Israel to live on, not a sheep, ox, or donkey. For they would come up with their cattle and their tents, and invade like a multitude of locusts. Both they and their camels were innumerable. And they would come to the land to ruin it. So Israel was brought very low because of Midian, and Bani Israel cried out to Adonai. Now it came about when Bani Israel cried out to Adonai because of Midian, that Adonai sent a prophet to Bani Israel. He said to them, Thus say Adonai, God of Israel, it was I who brought you up from Egypt and brought you out of the house of bondage. Then I delivered you from the hand of the Egyptians and from the hand of all your oppressors, and drove them out from before you and gave you their land. Then I said to you, I am Adonai your God. You are not to fear the gods of the Amorites in whose land you were dwelling, but you have not obeyed my voice, calling to Gideon. Then the angel of Adonai came and sat under the terebinth that was at Ophrah, that belonged to Joash the Abiezrite, while his son Gideon was beating out wheat in the winepress in order to hide it from the Midianites. Then the angel of Adonai appeared to him and said to him, Adonai is with you, O mighty man of valor. But Gideon said to him, O my Lord, if Adonai is with us, then why has all this befallen us? So where are his wonders that our fathers told us about, saying, Didn't Adonai bring us up from Egypt? But now Adonai has abandoned us and given us into the hand of Midian. Then Adonai turned toward him and said, Go in his might of yours and deliver Israel from the hand of Midian. Have not I sent you? Then he said to him, Me, my Lord, with what would I deliver Israel? Look, my family is the poorest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my father's house. But Adonai said to him, Surely I will be with you, and you will strike down Midian as if it were one man. Then he said to him, If now I have found favor in your eyes, then please show me a sign that is really you talking with me. please don't leave from here until I come up to you and bring out my offering and lay it before you. So he said, I will stay until you come back. Then Gideon went in and prepared a kid and matzah from the ephah of flour. He put the meat in a basket and the broth in a pot and brought them out to him under the terebinth and presented them. And then the angel of God said to him, take the meat and the matzah and lay them on this rock and pour out the broth. So he did so. Then the angel of Adonai put out the end of the staff, like was in his hand, and touched the meat and the matzah. That was in his hand and touched the meat and the matzah. Fire sprang up from the rock and consumed the meat and the matzah. Then the angel of Adonai vanished from his sight. When Gideon realized that he was the angel of Adonai, Gideon said, Alas, my lord Adonai, for I have seen the angel of Adonai face to face. But Adonai said to him, Shalom to you. Fear not, you will not die. So Gideon built an altar there to Adonai and called it Adonai Shalom. To this day it is yet an Ophrah of the Abiezrites, something like that. Now it came to pass that same night that the Adonai said to him, take the young bull that belongs to your father and the second bull of 7 years old, and pull down the altar of Baal that belongs to your father. Cut down the Asherah that is beside it, build an altar to it in an orderly manner, and take the second bull and offer a burnt offering with the wood of the Asherah pole that you will cut down. So Gideon took 10 of his male servants and did as Adonai had spoken to him. Then, since he was too afraid of his father's household and the townspeople to do it by day, he did it at night. Now when the townspeople arose early in the morning, behold, the altar of Baal was broken down. The Asherah pole that was beside it was cut down, and the second pole was offered up in the altar that was built. So they said to one another, who did this thing? And when they inquired and asked around, they said, Gideon, son of Joash, did this thing. And the townspeople said to Joash, bring out your son that he may die, because he has broken down the altar of Baal, and even cut down the Asherah pole that was beside it. But Joash said to all who stood against him, so you're going to defend Baal? You're going to rescue him? Whoever defends him will be put to death in the morning. If he is a god, let him defend himself, since someone has broken down his altar. So on that day he was called Jerubbaal, saying, let Baal contend with him, since he broke down his altar. Now all the Midianites, the Amalekites, and the people of the east gathered together, crossed over, and camped in the valley of Jezreel. But the Ruach Adonai clothed Gideon, and he blew the shofar, and Abiezer rallied behind him. Then he sent messengers throughout Manasseh, and they also rallied behind him. Then he sent messengers to Asher, Zebulun, and Naphtali, and they came up to join them. Signs of the fleece. And Gideon said to God, if you were going to deliver Israel by my hand, as you have spoken, see, I am putting a fleece of wool on the threshing floor. If there is only dew on the fleece, and all the ground is dry, then I will know that you will deliver Israel by my hand, as you have spoken. And it was so. When he rose up early the next day, he squeezed the fleece and wrung dew out of the fleece, a bowl full of water. Then Gideon said to God, let not your anger burn against me if I speak once more. Let me please test once more with the fleece. Let it now be dry only on the fleece, but let there be dew all over the ground. God did so that night, since it was only dry on the fleece, and there was dew all over the ground.